season, according to some new data from Adobe Analytics. Out-of-stock messages online are expected to go up 172% this holiday season compared with last year. Get this, up 360% over a 2-year basis. These numbers come as shoppers rush to stores and onto websites. They're purchasing gifts, exacerbating the supply chain backlog around the world right now. Joining me is the Washington Post economic correspondent, Heather Long. Welcome back, Heather, though I tell you, this is not something we all want to talk about. Look, we're seeing the highest inflation in 13 years. We've been told this is short term, but with the higher demand, the cost of consumer goods going up. That includes food, energy costs for sure. Officials say that U.S. households are going to pay more to heat their homes this winter. This doesn't feel short term. Why is that?
It's looking less and less likely to be short term. We even saw folks like Fed Chair Jerome Powell come out and say last week, at the end of last week, that he thinks it's going to last longer and longer and more into 2022. And you're right. I think what's really important here is it's not just in one area. You know, it's not just those used car lumber prices that were such an issue in the spring or summer. We are now seeing rising prices almost across the board. Pretty much any kind of protein you might buy, from beef to poultry to pork to bacon to eggs, is up 10%. Of course, those gas prices at the pump up about $1 from last year. But also rent prices. We are seeing some of the highest rent in years in terms of the rent prices going up. So you put all that together, that's housing, that's transportation, that's food, and unfortunately these worker salaries are not keeping up. They're being eaten up by inflation, and that's why this is hitting the working class so hard. And in many polls are starting to show that inflation is as much of a concern as the coronavirus for many Americans.
Wow. Those clogged ports off the coast of California causing a ripple effect in the economy. And the issue goes way beyond just unloading the container ships. You have the head of the California Trucking Association who says a state of emergency should be considered because the country lacks 80,000 truck drivers. Now, that's a record. Do you think this is going to be an ongoing issue? Do you see any end in sight?
It's definitely an ongoing issue, and that's why this is all lasting longer than anyone expected. I think what we're all learning with how the supply chain works is there's so many parts that can have failures right now. And what's really seems to be the trouble at the California ports is they basically have a traffic jam. There are so many containers that have been unloaded from the ships, but they are sitting in the ports or in these various parking lots waiting to be taken by trucks or trains or any other mode of transportation. And there's just so many that it's like a total jam, and they can't even move anything around. And then these what are called chassis, the actual mechanism that you carry one of those containers that you could drive a truck off or you could drive to the rail yard. The problem is there's nowhere to, when the trucking companies are bringing back the empty chassis, they have nowhere to put them. Those parking lots are going to be so jammed.
It's just a mess any way you look at it. Let me ask you about what you write about inflation and how that could impact consumer behavior long term. There are people who are uncomfortable about money right now, certainly. Let's take a listen.
I have to be very frugal on what I buy, especially now. The prices are really gone up, really high.
I've noticed everything's going up, even if it's like 20 cents, like 30 cents, everything has started going up a lot.
And look, to your earlier point, according to a Fox News survey, 87% of Americans are very concerned about inflation, 50% concerned about gas. What kind of decisions do consumers have to make if inflation remains high? There will be long-term behavioral changes, don't you think?
That's why I really think that inflation is likely to stay what I call uncomfortably high. Even if it's not at over 5%, it could still be in the 4% range or 3.5% range, which is going to feel a lot higher, just like what many of those people were saying on the videos you just played for a long time. And the reason is that there is a psychological shift. People are starting to see these price increases across the board, and they are starting to change their behaviors. We're starting to see restaurants raise the prices on the menus because they just don't see any end to this anytime soon. And we're starting to see a lot of workers say, look, I need a pay increase to keep up with all of these rising costs. And so it sort of starts a seesaw. Workers want higher pay, rightfully so, and then companies have to turn around and raise the prices to adjust for higher pay and higher supply and backlog costs.
Yeah, a difficult time to say the least. Heather Long, thank you so much for writing about it and talking about it with us. We'll have you back, no doubt. The legal battle ahead for Steve Bannon.